Welcome to the Thrive in Practice podcast, a bite-sized show designed to keep you motivated, inspired, and on track to creating a thriving healthcare business. Every Monday morning at 8 a.m, I'll share simple actions you can take in your business right now to help you get more clients, increase your income, and reduce overwhelm. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive in Practice podcast. Today's going to look a little bit differently because I've decided to interview a good friend of mine, Tess Scott-Ramsay, who is a remedial massage therapist. She's also a manager of a practice, and she's recently started her own business called Strategic Alignment, where she's working as a business consultant to support practitioners in building their businesses. So, Tess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
And lovely to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started Strategic Alignment and your experience as a practice manager? And we'll go into diving into the things that you've seen. And the intent of today's podcast is to try to draw out from you the things that you commonly see people doing wrong in practices and what might actually be able to help them. So let's start first with your journey and how you came to start Strategic Alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been on all sides of the coin here. I've worked as a practitioner. I've studied in a Bachelor of Health Science, and I've also worked as a practice manager and business development manager for allied health and natural medicine for a number of years. I saw lots of different things happening in practices, as you can imagine, and it triggered me to think that maybe we needed to start something that could support practitioners in the shorter term. So not so much as a VA service, but more as a service that could be sort of systems set up, business strategies and development, and going in and implementing those systems and strategies and then moving away and allowing people to sort of go forth and practice and not have ongoing costs of VA service. That to me seemed like a really good way to support practitioners in the short term, but also in the long term, to have those systems all set up for them so that they don't need that ongoing help or support.
And it's amazing what a difference it makes when you've got your foundations right. You can really build a practice and grow. But if you don't get those foundations right from the get-go, you will find that you'll keep lapsing and falling into problems, which then make you feel more overwhelmed. And it's very hard to keep up with your workload and feeling like you're in control of your business. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure you remember those days too, when you would have first started working, because you're a remedial massage therapist, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I do. I really do. Those initial days of practice and just being completely overwhelmed with the admin side of things and the notes and keeping up with compliance and not understanding the importance of those basic foundations, I think, that are really integral to running a successful practice. Definitely really important. And it can be completely overwhelming. And often I think, particularly when you've just finished as a graduate or you've sort of been working for somebody for a long time, those things are not things that you really needed to focus on. You've been focusing on your techniques or your clinical practice and understanding those sorts of things and the assessments, but that sort of business development side of things and those foundational administrative and compliance side of things just don't seem, to really be important in those initial stages. But they are the most important things really for your practice to survive and thrive in the long term.
I think one of the biggest things that I really struggled with when I first started was that I thought I was just a practitioner and I'm just going to go and help my patients. But then I started my practice and suddenly I was wearing all these hats. I had to be the tech person. I had to be the bookkeeper. I had to be the marketer. I had to be the secretary. There were so many hats you have to wear in business. And I think for me, that was the biggest shock because it's like, how do you become the best practitioner and have the time for your clients when you don't have those systems and procedures and things set up in the first place? So I'm sure you would have found the same, which is going to lead to my first question to you. I'd love to know, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see practice owners make when they're trying to grow their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest one has got to be a lack of a clear strategy. Like you said, when you first start going into business, you don't necessarily know all the hats that you're going to need to wear. And that understanding of strategy and an actionable plan to go forward is super important. And I think it's something that people don't really get until they're in there and they've got all the hats and they don't know which one to put on when. So that's really important, having a solid plan and a clear strategy that outlines your goals and your target audience, and what steps you sort of want to work towards, who you want to work with. Those things are really important. I think underestimating your marketing can also really be unsupportive with growing. Relying solely on word of mouth can limit growth, and that sort of online presence can be really important. One of the biggest ones most recently, I think, has been overlooking technology and how you can leverage technology in your practice management software and your administrative strategies to support your business. Don't be scared of technology. I think there's a lot of things there that people are a bit afraid of because they're not sure quite how to use them. But those automations and those tech solutions can really help streamline operations. I think also a failure to adapt to those things, or a failure to adapt to the healthcare landscape, which is, as we all know, constantly changing, between Medicare and NDIS, and also, sort of new and improved techniques and assessments and strategies. That failure to adapt can be really a disadvantage. And also ignoring feedback or ignoring your customer or client journey. And that includes from the very get-go of when they first engage with you. So from when they get to your website, to booking with you, to the conversations with you, to the filling out intake forms, if all those things are really clunky, it can be really off-putting for people. And it means that you won't retain clients, or it means that those clients sort of haven't had the best start with you, which can then lead to, again, not retaining clients. And not having word of mouth, which, whilst I said before, it's not the, it's an incredibly important part of gaining new clients.
Absolutely. And the client journey for me is probably one of the biggest ones, because a lot of practitioners don't map out what they want for their clients, or even outlay that to their clients. So they may know in their head that the patient's probably going to need X, Y, Z, but they haven't communicated that to the client. And then the client drops off care and they wonder why. But a lot of the times it's just simple communication with your clients. And this is why having all of that set up from the outset is so important, because we all know how hard it is to get clients through the door. It's very easy to lose them if you can't do the real basics of client retention in your practice.
Absolutely.
So I think that's huge. So talk me through your processes. Somebody's come to see you and they're struggling to build their practice. They feel really overwhelmed. They don't know where to go next. What would be the first thing you would do when you'd walk into their practice to do an assessment? What are the things that you're looking for to help them improve with?
Yeah. So I would look at all their systems, from their practice management system to their email systems, what they're currently using, what sort of functionality. Often when people first start in practice, they will choose a practice management software, not necessarily through education or knowledge of that practice management system, but what everybody else is using. And they don't necessarily look at all the functionality that they can get out of it, which I think is really important. But they also then don't grow with it. So when people implement new things, when those platforms implement new things, they don't necessarily keep up with those things. So I would look at the functionality of what they've currently got, what it is that they're wanting to achieve. I would prioritize what was most important for them. And initially, we would have a strategic planning session that could go from anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, really, and looking at their goals, what they're wanting to do, where they're wanting to be, where they currently are, and prioritizing those things, and coming up with an actionable plan that can really help them to see a pathway forward. I think that's a really difficult one, because oftentimes people get really bogged down in the detail, or they've got all these amazing ideas and the clinical knowledge and education to support that, but they don't know what steps to do first. So prioritizing those things, I think, are really important. And again, as I said, embracing technology. So anything that can be automated, that can free up their time, those things need to be prioritized, I think, because those once those things are going in the background, it means it frees up time, money, and resources that are really important. And hiring staff too early sometimes can mean that you are not getting the most out of your practice management software because you've got staff running around trying to do everything for you. Whereas if you can automate your invoices, your payments, your rebates, your reminders, anything that can be automated then ticks over in the background. And you just need to check on those every now and again. So say, when you need to do anything tax related or, your BAS or anything, then you can look at it then. It's, anything that you can automate, I think is one of the biggest things. So embracing that technology and the use of the practice management software functionality that you can, and keeping up with industry standards, I think is also really important. Making sure that you're across everything that you need to be across.
I think I can certainly relate to that as well, because we've got a practice management software and that's been out for a couple of years now.
Yes.
And I still get people that have been with us from the start emailing, asking if we can build certain functionality that already exists.
Yes.
And it's not frustrating. I totally understand it because you're a busy practitioner. You don't have the time necessarily to go in, and you may not have seen the email we sent out, but it's quite, because our system is so user friendly and everything is so obvious in its location. So it's hard to do certain things. But I just think how many of our users are not getting the full functionality of our software because they haven't seen specific features that were fully automated for them as well. And that's certainly been our priorities, that building as many automations as possible. There's one coming out that I'm super excited about that has workflows where people can go in and create triggers and send out nurture sequences to clients. So super important, I think, is that I 100% agree with you, is that the more you automate in your practice and have things happening without you having to think about them, the better off you're going to be in building your practice. So, what you're saying is common sense. Be prepared, be planned, set your foundations.
Yep.
Why do you think, despite most people knowing all of this, why do you think practitioners struggle so much to build a successful practice?
It's a really good question. I think, those things are definitely really important. Again, I think it's just not that lack of understanding about the business side of things. Like I said, they've got all their ideas and their clinical understanding, but there's not a huge amount of support out there for the actual business setup. So often, as I mentioned before, people will employ a VA, whereas if they came to us first and we had a look at their systems, or say it's a startup business, we would look at your goals, what you're wanting to achieve, and then set an actionable plan, implement all the systems. So set up all those automations, run through which practice management software is the best one for them. And, that really does depend on the different types of practices, whether they need certain things. Do they need Medicare rebates or do they not? And do they need healthcare rebates? Do they need, what sort of automations they need? So that will really impact what we would recommend and then implement. I think there's a number of different reasons why people really don't. I think burnout as well, thinking that you need to see as many clients as possible. Whereas if you do it, I think it's about smart strategies and about sort of the looking at the clients that you want to see, making sure that you set really good work-life boundaries and have that balance. Because, you can try and pump out and see as many clients as you possibly can. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the work-life balance, and you're running on burnout, then you're not going to be able to give to your clients that you're already seeing. The other thing I think that's really important is retention, which we touched on before. Retention and sort of high dropout rate or low retention or high cancellations. And I think there are some things that clinicians can do to sort of ensure that they retain their clients a little bit more. And it's all in their words and in their intentional wording when they speak to clients. I think there's a number of different things that we do as clinicians that really don't support necessarily that sort of retention rate. And there's I suppose one of those things could be, being really specific with your treatment plan. From the initial get-go, making sure that your treatment in your initial session, when you're doing your assessments, saying, we can do this X over this period of time, and hopefully this will achieve this. And I think giving a clear pathway for your clients is really helpful for your retention rate. I think, again, as I mentioned, the intentional wording. So, instead of saying, oh, see you later, let's book you in for your next couple of sessions, and book them as far ahead as your treatment plan says. Because what that does then is, if you do that with every client, then you end up booked out, and then you end up with a waiting list and a cancellation list. So then you can refer back to your waiting list or your cancellation list whenever you get a cancellation. There's lots of different tips and tricks along the way that, that can help with that retention rate and that keeping that low cancellation rate as well. Yeah.
Quite surprising to me how many practitioners have low retention rates simply because they do not ask their patients to rebook because they don't want to come across as pushy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like me, you can totally relate to that, because I know when I first graduated, I just wanted to help people, and having to get them to pay me for it felt so wrong. It's like, but I love doing this.
Yes.
You don't realize that you're actually making it very uncomfortable for your clients when you're letting the money get in the way, because there's an exchange. You've helped them out. They want to be able to compensate you. And so often when you get to that payment stage and you're feeling a bit awkward about taking the money, or you're feeling awkward about telling them when to come back to see you because you don't want them to feel you're being pushy, you're not effectively reinforcing the need for your services. And so automatically your services become something that is a luxury, or if you want to come back, there's no urgency about the treatments because you've not portrayed that to your client.
Absolutely.
I think that is the first and foremost thing that practitioners should learn when they graduate school is confidence in rebooking.
Yes, and the value in your service.
And the value in your service, absolutely. And the value in not just your knowledge and your time, but the energy that you're putting towards helping these people. Because often you'll get a patient that comes in and you don't know the answers straight away, and you need to go and do additional research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that needs to be factored into your time as well with your patients. Because I know I've done that a number of times.
Yeah.
Even though I've been out for 24 years, there are still times when somebody will come and see you with something that's a bit more complex, or not responding the way you expected them to respond. And therefore you go out, you do some more research, and those things have to be factored into your time as well. But I think as practitioners, as healers, we really undervalue what we do for our patients. And so I think the mindset for me is probably the biggest factor that I think practitioners really struggle with, is not valuing themselves, not valuing their time, not valuing their knowledge and what we actually do for our patients. So I think that's
very more.
Yeah. And what about marketing? Do you actually help with marketing as well? Do you come in and set marketing plans with practitioners?
Marketing is something that I'm looking at doing. At the minute, it's not a huge part of what we're doing, but development of passive income strategies is definitely part of that. So looking at how you can have things ticking over in the background on your website, resources, what sorts of things that, as speech pathologists can offer that can just tick over in the background. Previously worked with a speech pathologist who used to sing, and she would play guitar while she would sing, and she would have songboards that she would have for her clients that she would send out to her clients. And then she had a YouTube channel and she would sing, and they would follow along on the songboards with different magnets or different animals. And so those sorts of things you can have sort of ticking over in the background, that program in the background. So I think passive income strategies is certainly something that we're working with. In regards to marketing, potentially in the future, we will look at doing some marketing stuff as well. I think it is something that's really important for practitioners. To get that marketing right. And it's certainly something we can support with, but not necessarily do the actual posting or anything like that. Yeah.
And what a lot of practitioners think they need is marketing, but what they actually need is the systems, the automations, client retention strategies. Because again, as we've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast today, you can go out and do all the marketing you want, and you might get some people coming through the door, but if you can't retain them, you are going to be spending a fortune on marketing. So anyone that has worked with me in my Thrive in Practice course, or who's done some mentoring with me as well, the first thing I focus on is not the marketing that they think, which is
Yes.
social media or all,
Yeah, absolutely.
ads. It's trying to improve those systems so that when they do get people through the door, they are actually able to retain them. So for anybody listening, if you think you need marketing, know that you should probably be looking at the internal structures of your business before you consider marketing,
Definitely.
because the last thing you want to do is go on this endless merry-go-round of having to constantly market. And I'm sure you've probably seen this in your own practice and amongst practices that you've managed as well with the practitioners working in those businesses. The practices that are the busiest don't do a lot of marketing. And it's
No.
because they've got really good systems in place, specifically with respect to client retention and client relationships, that those practices flourish organically. And that's certainly what happened through me and my own experiences, is that I very, very rarely did any marketing. And it was because I didn't rely on necessarily on referrals. I didn't like push referrals, but they just came naturally because you built really good relationships with your clients.
Yep.
Even when you couldn't help clients, if I referred clients out because I couldn't help them, I still found those patients referred back to me anyway because of the relationships and the honesty and the trust that was built, that I didn't waste their time to try to keep seeing them when I couldn't help them. I was very honest about what they needed. So I think, again, looking at those things and understanding that that's where you should be focusing your efforts on, those client relationships and the retention, that in itself is going to go a massive way in building a successful practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Those relationships are key. Absolutely.
mm,
The client journey and establishing that rapport with people from the get go, I think, make a huge difference. And also, I think framing their health as a priority, just going back to what we were sort of talking about before with the mindset, I think um, helping people to understand how much their health is a priority, I think, is really important.
mm,
Um, yeah, it's certainly something with the mindset that, undervaluing what we do a little bit
mm,
is really difficult when you first start out, and even difficult as you move into your own space.
mm,
I think, yeah, undervaluing yourself and undervaluing what we do
mm,
as healers is definitely one of those things. But yes, as you were saying, those structures and that business systems, they are foundational for, and you can do all the marketing in the world, but if you don't have those things in place, you are going to find you just won't be able to keep people.
mm. And you know what else I've noticed a shift in? You've been around in this industry for quite some time as well. I don't know if you've noticed this shift too, but when I first graduated 24 years ago, nearly 24 years ago, what I was seeing, especially because my therapy wasn't known then, nobody knew what my therapy was. And so there was that education process behind trying to teach people what I did before they would even come to see me. But what I found initially was that people were coming in and expecting one treatment was going to fix them. But
Yes.
now I don't see that as much anymore.
Yep.
It's like every single patient I see, it's before I've even asked them, well, I don't ask my patients. I tell them when they need to come back to see me. If they choose not to
Yes.
book in, that's fine. But I don't say,
Yep.
when do you want to come back? I'll say, I'll need to see you again at this stage or this stage. So that's how
Yep.
I frame it, because that's how I feel prioritizes the importance of needing that service. But before I've even had a chance to say that, the question will come, when do you want to see me next? And so
Yes.
I've noticed this huge shift in people understanding that practitioners like us, the allied health practitioners, the naturopaths, the massage and myotherapists, and the homeopaths, people understand that they're not going to come in for one visit and be magically cured. They already know they need to come
Yep.
back. But yet I still see a lot of practitioners feeling like their patients think that they have to fix them in one visit and then feeling awkward in asking their patients to come back. So
Yep.
it's the trend that you've noticed, that patients are automatically asking, when do I need to come back in next, before you've even prompted them to book back in?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly if that clinician has built up a really lovely rapport in their first session as well, and their client journey has been really satisfactory, or even more than satisfactory, it has been really enjoyable. I think those people tend to want to come back as well, and I think people are. As we were talking about, sort of that framing, that prioritizing of healthcare, I think people are much more invested in and understand through education of clinicians like yourself and me who have done this for many, many years, that they understand that it is those issues that they're coming in with have built up over a long period of time. And that education piece around understanding that is not going to take one session, you are going to need multiple sessions, I think has really helped people to sort of reframe that priority in their own health and wanting to feel better.
Mm,
You know, I think it's definitely the landscape there's changed through that long term of education around, people needing to do multiple sessions to actually get somewhere, because, it takes 10 years to get your shoulders up around your neck. It's going to take a little bit of time to get them back down again, definitely. So yeah, I do find that people ask, and they want to book in for more sessions because they want to see people, they want to see the clinician, they want to feel better. And, sort of I've worked in both allied health and the natural health as well. So, I've worked with naturopaths and osteopaths and chiropractors and acupuncturists, but I've also worked with psychologists and speech pathologists and OTs, and a lot of them work with children. So therefore it's the parents as well that for them to build up the rapport with the kids as well as the parents. And then, those sorts of sessions are much more structured and they need to see them consistently. So yeah, I think there's definitely more of an understanding around that has come through education from clinicians over the years, definitely.
And the beautiful thing about that is if you go into every consult, even if you don't know for certain, but believing that everybody knows that one treatment is not going to fix them,
Yeah.
it really takes that awkwardness and that barrier away in telling the clients to come back to see you as well. So it
Yeah.
really shifts the mindset. And for me, everything's about shifting the mindset in practitioners, because when they've got these blocks, they're going to
Yeah.
continually come up. But if you understand that patients know that they're going to need to come back for more
Yeah.
visits, and you've built that good rapport, you will
Yeah.
find that it is easy to rebook those patients when you've been good with your communication and explaining to them what to expect and what's going to come from there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
one last question for you, Tess. What advice would you give to a practitioner who was feeling really overwhelmed, stuck in their business, and even considering quitting?
Oh, don't quit. Don't quit. The people need you. Your clients need you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out for support. There is a lot of support out there. We are just one of those businesses that will support. And for our business, for my business, Strategic Alignment, we support in the short term and the long term. Part of the reason we're doing what we're doing is because we want to be able to be accessible and approachable, and to give multiple ways of support. So I think reaching out for support is the biggest thing for clinicians. If you don't understand or you're feeling overwhelmed, you know, having a strategic planning session, even if it's just the strategic planning session, can sometimes just give you that clear space to think about how to prioritize, where you want to be, and what steps you need to put in place to get to that place. I think prioritizing is essential, and also prioritizing your own work-life balance is essential. Those work-life balance and gives you the space and the energy back to be able to give in and give that to your clients. So ensuring that you're taking time for yourself is really important. So, which then feeds back into having those foundational systems in place so that you can do that, and you can step away for a weekend and not feel like you have to constantly be checking your emails, because you've got something ticking over in the background that's replying to your emails, or you've got an intake form that automates and auto populates into your files, or there's so many different options there that you can put in place so that you can prioritize your work-life balance. I
Absolutely.
think that's, yeah.
And I think people really underestimate the value of the planning sessions. I
Yes.
know for me, recently I've had some big changes that have happened in my life business wise. And, you have those moments of feeling really overwhelmed. I love what I do, so there's never a moment in my life where
Yes.
I'm like, I'm quitting. But I do have those moments of feeling like I just want to curl up in a corner and rock myself because I'm, feeling really overwhelmed by things. And
Yep.
just sitting down and getting it out of your head onto a piece of paper. In fact, I went to Bali recently for a breathwork and mindset retreat. It was phenomenal.
Amazing.
And on the plane ride, within the matter of like a couple of hours, I had nailed out so much out of my head onto a piece of paper.
Yep.
I was able to go to that retreat and not even worry about work. I've got a great VA that really supports my business as well. So I knew that
Yep.
I could switch off and enjoy my retreat. So much of what was in my head making me feel overwhelmed was out of my head and now on a piece of paper. And that in itself is incredible. But then to have somebody like yourself to be able to talk that through with and say, this is what I'm thinking. And to get that feedback makes a phenomenal difference for your mindset, for your stress levels. And it really
Yeah,
brings you to
absolutely.
that place of feeling like you're back in control and that you can move forward positively. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Tess, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining me. I'll have your website, Strategic Alignment, and your Instagram page, which is the same name. Is that correct?
Yes, sure
Strategic
is.
Alignment. Yep. I'll have them in the show notes. So anyone who wants to reach out to you can do so via those two channels. Thanks again.
Fantastic.
It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you so much.
If you're a natural health practitioner looking to build a thriving practice, then My Appointments is here to help. Our innovative practice management software and automated solutions reduce your administrative burdens, allowing you to focus on what you do best, positively impacting your patients' lives. With plans starting at just $0 per month, you can save both time and money. Visit myappointments.app for a 30-day free trial, or for more information about the Thrive in Practice course, head to anilmustafa.com.au.